Alrighty, guys. Well, let's get started here. Good morning. My name is Britta Geddert. I'm with Forefront, a great SI partner of Salesforce. So thank you for joining this conversation around the Salesforce process manufacturing and connecting the value chain. So a quick, housekeeping note, please submit questions in your Q&A along the way. And we'll take some time at the end of our presentation to address those. We're so excited to have you here. And I will let our great presenters introduce themselves now.
Hi, Britta. Thank you. This is Andrew Witherspoon. I'm a VP here at Salesforce. I work on our manufacturing industry team, and I work with the executive leadership of dozens of our customers around the world every year, particularly in the process, but in the general manufacturing space as well. And I'm joined here by Chris. Chris, I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. So hi, everybody. Thanks, Andrew. My name is Christopher Cook. I run our manufacturing practice at Forefront. I've spent a good chunk of my career actually in manufacturing, and once joined Forefront, sort of lead that part of our practice. So nice to see everybody that was able to join today. I'll hand it back to you, Andrew, for our safe harbor.
All right. Well, since Salesforce is a publicly traded company, please base your purchasing decisions on currently shipping software. I'll talk a little bit about our product strategy, but pretty much everything I'll be covering today is currently shipping. So one thing I want to talk about on this slide is really the journey Salesforce has had in manufacturing. We actually started 21 plus years ago in high-tech manufacturing in Silicon Valley. But it was really about 7 or 8 years ago that we as an organization really pivoted to reimagine our go-to-market by industry. Prior to that, we were like a lot of manufacturers kind of going to market by our products, Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, et cetera. And we found that it was overly generic and we really needed to add more value and more specific sections. And so we started with manufacturing in general and then started breaking it into subsectors like automotive, discrete, process. And then eventually our goal is to really have solutions at the subsegment level, as you see here on these slides. And when I talk about going to market, it's not just positioning and marketing, where we have separate product teams, we have separate advisory teams, sales teams, service teams, and we're really focused on investing in the sector. In fact, if you go to the next slide, we become quite active in the manufacturers, where my boss, Cindy Bolt, is on the board. We're investing in AME. We have industry-specific customer advisory board and partner advisory boards. And we're really looking to have a solution that's much more turnkey for you. Now, as part of that, we do an annual exercise. If you go to the next slide, please, Christopher. Where we do third-party research surveys of up to 800 organizations. We work with McKinsey and Bain and our other SI partners. And we really look at what's top of mind. We call these trends and imperatives. We're actually in the process of updating this for 2023. This is currently what we had from 2022. And moving from left to right, really deploying digital experiences is one of the top things we're engaging with customers on. And this is more than just customer partner facing, this is all stakeholders. So really connecting the journey together across all the touch points within an organization. This is a key area of investment that we see. And obviously the pandemic accelerated the importance of this. Another key area that's top of mind is becoming a data-driven organization. Many organizations in the sector have massive amounts of data, but it's not actionable data. And making decisions on it is still an onerous process. And so there's a lot of focus in that area as well. What's fascinating to me is, and I actually, like Christopher, started from industry. I spent the first third of my career at DuPont in a variety of roles, including during the .com era, and worked on several marketplaces. And we're seeing that same trend of marketplaces, subscriptions, digitizing and monetizing data. So a lot of interesting experimentation and new business models that I haven't seen in quite some time. The demographics of the sector are also quite challenging. A lot of knowledge is going to retire in the next 5 years. It's not always the most attractive sector for recruiting younger workers. And so preparing the future of work is really keeping a lot of the CEOs up at night. And then sustainability over the last couple of years, starting in Europe, it will become a top tier item. It's fairly in its journey, but also a critical area. Now, all of this was blown up about 12 months ago with with the Ukrainian war, with inflation, supply chain challenges. And so in the conversations I'm having with executives, the biggest challenge is the volatility. And in the process sector, it's volatility on the sourcing side, as well as on the downstream demand side. And so whereas typically planning cycles were monthly or quarterly, there in fact need to be weekly and sometimes daily, with products being on allocation. And so this is creating a significant challenge in terms of the agility. Many organizations have designed their forecasting processes around dozens of spreadsheets and teams of analysts, and they can't literally do it any faster than every 3 or 4 weeks, and that's just not working with this increased volatility. Obviously, inflation, higher input costs, certain products being on allocation is creating a significant challenge around pricing. So how often do you normally reprice your products? Usually it's only once or twice a year. You may need to reprice every order in some cases. Then when things are on allocation, then you have to figure out, okay, which products can you make and which segments and customers can you sell them to profitably? And these are challenges that many companies have not organized to solve in an easy way. So it's consuming a lot of management's time. And obviously profitability is critical when you have these things happening. And so the ability to connect your commercial processes, as we'll talk about shortly in a couple of the case studies, together to achieve a much more automated commercial excellence experience for both your internal stakeholders as well as your customers is critical. So if you go into the next slide, what we're seeing is companies couple of years ago were really focused in the sector at going out to their customers, digitizing the customer experience, being more customer centric, which is great, and we fully endorse that strategy. But what we found with these challenges and volatility is that they're literally not organized internally to be able to deliver a quality experience. Simple things like where is your stuff in the fulfillment cycle often is challenged. A lot of things are manual. There's not a lot of automated workflow. A lot of data and processes are stuck in silos. And so I'm seeing in the last 12 months recognition of this and a lot of work going internally to be able to deliver and connect those experiences in a scale way. And so I think that's going to continue to 2023. Next slide, please. So where that leaves us is, what does good look like? And there's a great white paper from McKinsey, which I'm referencing here at the bottom, called the $1 trillion opportunity in the industrial sector. And their hypothesis is that the top quartile in a given segment of manufacturers is going to win the vast majority of the profits and market share by delivering the best connected experience across all touch points. And the challenge I've seen in my conversations is you look at this diagram, you've basically got 12 different capabilities across the customer journey. But unfortunately, these are often implemented separately in silos with different technology stacks, different data silos, different experiences. And so it's literally quite impossible to have a connected journey, much less the analytics to be able to continually improve or alter those journeys based on different customer segments or personas. And so our recommendation is, as you said on the journey, regardless of the technology and providers you use, to really have a 2 to 3 year roadmap on how your acquiring processes lead into your selling processes, your services process, and the ongoing account management, and how that all can be connected together in a deeply integrated, compelling way. And so what does that look like? If you go to the next slide, please, Christopher. It looks basically in these two personas, and this is very specific to process manufacturing. And because of my background with DuPont, I pretty much lead our strategy for our go-to-market in the sector. And whereas I see most of the peers, and I'll go through a couple of examples in the case studies in a moment, are investing on the right, which I call it kind of a digital sales and service omni-channel experience. So if you can't read the slide, this is e-commerce, order management, quote management, case and service management. These are basic omni-channel service functions. That would basically be table stakes in my experience at this point in 2023. Where I see a lot of opportunity for innovation is really on the left in what I call kind of product discovery journey. And this is where you're targeting customers, scientists, the product managers, their engineers, This is where you're doing sample management, guided selling, trying to get spec'd into that next project. That's kind of your future business. And I see a lot of annual activities and expense. I was working with one customer in specialty, and they were trying to respond to 1,000 RFIs a month with a large team, and they didn't have the ability to really understand which of those were just shopping for price and which ones were that future big project. So another way to look at it, as we go to the next slide, please, is really through the lens of a customer case study. So Solvay, if you're not familiar with them, they're a long-standing Salesforce customer. They do specialty materials. If you go to the next slide, and what I like about the Solvay story is they really very much are looking to create a single platform that allows them to connect and collaborate with their customers differentially depending on the segment. So they want to treat strategic accounts in a different way than key accounts, small customers, and distributors. So basically 4 main segments. So they want the marketing and business development, the customer service and support, and the technical service, all to be differentiated, but all delivered in a single platform and in a single way. And they've done a really nice job of this, and they're actually extending the same capability upstream to their suppliers as well. If you go on to another example, is Borealis, another specialty chemical material provider. And what I like about, and this is actually one of their slides that they presented with me at a webinar, is they see their employee experience intimately connected through Salesforce to the customer experience. And so they came up with this graphic to illustrate that the customer 360 is really just one database with a view to the customer, a view to the employee. So everyone's on the same page. And they did a lot of market research, if you go on to the next slide, in terms of what customers were looking for in the self-service experience. So if you haven't done self-service yet, this is a great list to focus on in this sector. So 3-click reorder, ability to track and manage POs and orders and deliveries no matter where they originated, all documents and certs for those orders, quality feedback, all the product-rich information, and then the ability to escalate to in-person service at a click of a button. So really a good baseline for that kind of that customer portal example I showed you on the right. Whereas I would say Solvay is working more on the product discovery side on the left. And with that, we'll go to the next slide and talk a little bit about how it all comes together. And I mentioned at the start that we have a site with about 100 of our larger customers, and what we did is we went deep with them to understand where they were using Salesforce, where they weren't using Salesforce when they could, and where they were doing a lot of customizations. And what we found is customers were using us across the top swim lane very commonly in the sector for sales, quoting, and so forth, and then often along the bottom for commerce and service. But what we found was that they were capturing those quotes, those volume agreements, and then they were going into the sales operations swim lane or into SAP, and people weren't able to really track, did that agreement really meet what we thought it was going to do when we agreed to it? Would we do that agreement again? What is the revenue leakage on that agreement? So there's a significant gap between what was happening on the front end of the sales process versus what was happening on the execution of it. Also, there wasn't a good way of connecting the total cost to serve or the ability to differentiate the delivery by segment. This becomes particularly important when you have challenges like products on allocation. Who's going to get that product? What is that allocation going to do for the total book of business for that customer? So we felt we needed to help organizations more in that sales operations swim lane. And so that's what we've been doing for the last 4 years with our Manufacturing Cloud, which is on the next slide. And so when we looked, if you could do the first build, please. When we looked at our customers, they traditionally start with us using Sales Cloud to manage new business. New business manufacturing is generally only about 20% of the revenue. Then typically they invest in service, which is the next build. But as you can see, there's always a large gap. And so we've been filling that gap over the last 4 years by building out the reoccurring business. So these volume agreements, the forecasting, plan versus actuals. And then if you're selling to OEMs, for example, program or project-based business. So this now allows you, properly modeled in Salesforce, to model your entire book of business, which we call integrated revenue management. And by putting all this together and then adding some specific capabilities along the bottom with an additional industry data model, data pipelines, rules engines, ability to process large data sets for calculating rebate accruals, as well as forecasting, we're able to do much, much more than you could before with generic sales and service cloud. So it's really custom built for manufacturing use cases. And since it's all on one single platform, if you go to the next slide, we have the ability through our analytics to do what we call revenue intelligence. And so you get essentially near real-time view into sales agreement compliance, account forecasting, account targeting, pricing recommendations from Einstein, statistical order forecasting as a sales input into your S&OP planning process. And so these things are not possible when you have all these other silos, as I mentioned before. So many of the companies we spoke to are working with, dozens of spreadsheets, and that's why they can't do their forecasting on a weekly or daily basis. By doing it all on a single platform, you have that ability. And with a great example, Christopher is going to talk about one of their customers in a project where they deployed this type of capability.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And just to give you guys another, sort of introduction to Forefront and how we relate to this whole process is, we're a partner of Salesforce. We have been for quite some time, about 15 years. And we focus specifically in this manufacturing space. So we collaborate with Salesforce and help them sort of come up with the solutions as well as implement them for customers and that are discrete and, predominantly process manufacturers. So what I want to take you through now is a real, case study and sort of a project that we worked on. Our customer in this case is one of the largest automotive paint manufacturers in the world. They provide custom colorants, coatings, and mixes for OEMs like Toyota, Hyundai, body shops, so repair shops, accessory makers, and more. And they've had great product success. I mean, they're, like I said, one of the largest in the world. But their sales and operations process was painful. Many of their orders were placed via outdated methods, phone, email, fax even. And their customers were asking for a much better buying experience. Also, these customers were often overbuying or underbuying supply, which Andrew sort of alluded to, which led to misallocated inventory and high priority orders for some of the larger customers. Finally, they had a poor forecasting capability, and they weren't able to anticipate demand from new business or existing business, which made up a large part of it. So Forefront and Salesforce partnered to attack this situation. First, we wanted to enable a seamless buying experience and introduce an e-commerce platform. We also knew that we needed to help buyers manage their inventory and set up some sort of reordering or automated process. We needed a place to view historical order data from all the data sources, whether it was SAP or directly from Salesforce for forecasting. And then we needed to stack this on top of new business. So run rate business on top of new business so we could build a holistic forecast. Finally, we needed a solution to help prioritize which customers received inventory, which one was most important to fulfill when we ran into the case of demand outpacing supply. So the solution was multiple technologies involving Salesforce, first and foremost, B2B commerce for manufacturing. We also had a Forefront built inventory management tool, which clicked into that B2B commerce engine. I'll show you a little bit about that. A robust integration to SAP to bring back all orders, regardless of how they're placed, and Manufacturing Cloud to tie all this information together, like Andrew was showing. So in a more visual way, we connected the value chain. Salesforce became the point of entry for all sales information related to new business, which I'm going to show you a little bit how that's modeled in a sales agreement. E-commerce customers placed all their orders through B2B commerce, and we integrated the other ones back. To correctly balance inventory, we launched our smart inventory platform, which had real-time visibility into the inventory of the customers, and then was able to manage those ordering thresholds and sort of reorder process automatically. And then finally, the sales team was able to take all of this data, view it in an aggregated manner where they could apply their input on the health of the account, their anticipated projected growth and future opportunities. So let's take this, let's actually dive into some of these elements. So the first one I'm going to show is business from net new customers or existing products. So many of you might be familiar with a standard opportunity in Salesforce or any other system for that matter. It's generally represented as an amount, a quantity of products sold and a close date. However, opportunities, as we all know, in process manufacturing are generally long-term contracts that need to be modeled differently. Manufacturing Cloud and sales agreements make this possible. So as shown here, the sales rep can project potential sales over time, including elements like planned quantities, planned amounts, and discounting based on volume. This much better represents the revenue from the potential business. And like other opportunities, we can normalize all of this by the probability of closure. So this doesn't artificially inflate our forecast. Once a sales agreement is won, we can then see how the agreement is performing against our projections. So as you can see here, I know it's a little blurry, but we've got actual quantities and actual amounts that are coming in, and we can monitor our revenue realization against that contract and what we anticipated. The next element to our connected chain is e-commerce. So this is a big piece because we really wanted to improve the buying experience. Here you can see screenshots of the customer portal where they can view their catalog, pricing, past orders, order status, and get help buying new products and managing their equipment. Often in the body shop space, mechanics are trying to match paint colors too. So in this portal, they have a custom mix order process that allows them to put in certain information so they can match the pigments and the coatings of the car or whatever accessory they're trying to repair. And as you can see here, it's a pretty intuitive user experience. This customer was very specific in the user experience that they wanted. And because of the flexibility of the platform with Salesforce, we were able to kind of curate the front end to their design. The next one, which is one of my favorites, is our solution around inventory. So this is a huge problem, this customer. Many of the end users, auto mechanics, body shops, they're not very good at managing their inventory levels, and they would often run out of these critical products or components to mix paint. And managing inventory is difficult. And what we went out to solve is how can the manufacturer in this case actually help their customers manage that inventory? So what we did is we devised a way to integrate to the customer's paint mixing system. So think about it, colorants and pigments that need to be mixed together, like if you were getting your paint mixed at Sherwin-Williams. As the products were consumed and mixed, we kept track of how much paint and additives were actually used. And so as the paint was mixed, it was deprecated from the inventory and updated in real time. And then once the inventory levels met a certain threshold, as you can see here, the system would automatically reorder the necessary paint and additives. So as you see on the screen, the customer can choose which products to automatically reorder and when to reorder them. It's pretty cool. Next, the customer could choose when they wanted the order to be placed, on what days. Just like a lot of other subscription-based ordering, they can choose exactly when they want those orders to be sent. And because, like almost everybody, I'm sure, this needed to be mobile first. So an intuitive, responsive design that supported mobile devices. So now that we have the seamless buying experience, we have the commerce orders flowing through Salesforce and new opportunities represented, we needed to bring back all the other orders into Salesforce. Forefront integrated all those non-e-commerce orders onto the platform by connecting to SAP. Many of the larger customers, think OEMs, right? They're buying via EDI or other direct integrations. So those orders need to be represented in Manufacturing Cloud and in the 360-degree view. Once we had all this order information in one system, it allowed us to build an account forecast shown here. So for each product or product family that was being purchased, whether it was new business or existing, the sales reps could apply adjustments to those, or even apply mass updates, growth, and other various factors that would adjust the forecast. We also use this data to soft allocate inventory. So as we were doing our planning process, we would look at the customer's projected consumption and make sure that the inventory was, and the upstream purchasing team was fulfilling enough orders to be able to actually, fulfill the inventory requests. All of this data was aggregated in Salesforce Analytics to deliver insight and a true picture of the customer, their forecast and their business against the actual forecast. And thanks to the power of Manufacturing Cloud, we're also able to apply advanced forecasting formulas across this data. So market growth, product demand, and even seasonality curves. So, applying those metrics against the model, along with historical actuals, gives us some really powerful analytics data that Salesforce can then visualize for us. And even in this case, as you see on the right hand, build confidence projections for customers, actual demand. So this allowed us to yield a highly accurate forecast that could be generated in real time. As Andrew was saying, we needed to be able to adjust our demand plan, not every year, but sometimes every quarter, every month, or even day. And this gave us that capability. So the benefits, first and foremost, we saw significant improvements in sales and margin. Having the customer data, buying trends at the fingertips enabled the reps to have way more meaningful conversations with their customers. So they were able to help drive buying decisions and not spend time collecting data. They're also alerted to when customers weren't buying what they normally would be buying, so they can address those issues. So providing a tool that the end customers can use to manage their paint inventory was also a massive benefit, because we were able to then predict and increase the product demand. Another was brand reputation. Just having a better e-commerce platform and inventory management system made it much easier for customers to buy from this manufacturer. And that also helped with inventory allocation and the decision-making process around order fulfillment when demand outpaced supply. Because we had that auto reorder process, we're able to anticipate what the customer is going to need before they actually needed it. And finally, as I just said, we had a much better process around demand planning. At any point in time, a sales director, operations, or purchasing team member could build a projected demand plan and segment it by geography, product line, account, sales team, and many other artifacts. The data came together to build a forecast with a true 360-degree view of the customers, which was consistently updated and live based on the data streams. So this is a huge, huge transformation for this customer, and as you can see how it, really changed the landscape. So I'm going to hand it back to Andrew now for another great customer story, showing you some more of the impact of this connected value chain.
So Christopher, I really like that story, and so I'm going to wrap up with one additional story to show you the actual financial impact and organizational impact really implementing this full kind of C360 approach can have. So I had the privilege of presenting at our Dreamforce conference in September with the CEO of a Japanese process manufacturer, Mypox. So this is a 100-year-old privately held business that creates polishing and finishing solutions at the nanotech scale. So think finishing silicon wafers in silicon fab facility. So very high tech products. But they had some challenges. And if you go to the next slide, they really had become very, very conservative and hidebound. And they were in love with their own product. And these are the actual slides the CEO presented with me at Dreamforce. And he was very transparent. He was third generation working for the firm. They were in love with their own products. They were disconnected from their customers in the market. It was impeding their ability to have successful product launches. They had developed a culture around data hoarding. So people were keeping their data in silos and using that as power within the organization. And all that led to a significant lack of trust and a lack of alignment, both within the organization and with their customers. And that was reflected by the graph you see on the right, the orange bar being revenue and the black being profit. And if you can't make out the years, basically going into about 10 years ago, they were losing money and they were approaching bankruptcy when he took over as CEO. And so if you go to the next slide, he realized that they had to do a drastic change, and changing any manufacturing firm, much less a 100-year-old Japanese one, is never easy from a culture standpoint. But he came up with a very clear vision, and within a year, convinced the whole organization to follow this approach. So the idea was not to innovate on the digital side and the experience side while still keeping that core conservative manufacturing culture. And to do that, starting on the left, he really got rid of all commercial systems outside of Salesforce. No more email internally. All collaboration had to be on the platform using Chatter. If there were going to be custom business processes, they would be developed on the core platform with custom objects and workflows. So essentially eliminating the silos by eliminating all the other systems that were creating silos. The selling and servicing process on a single, simple platform. So everything, all leads, all marketing, all quoting, all sales activities, everything was documented in Salesforce and in Quip. So that, again, everything in one place. And then they became a trailblazer. They were actually the first customer in Japan to implement Manufacturing Cloud. So they're always looking to innovate on the digital side while still maintaining a traditional culture on the manufacturing side. And then this is a really interesting one. On the data, you weren't allowed to essentially capture data unless you could visualize it. So all data was being actualized through the analytics platform. And he coined a term I'd never heard before. He considered CRM not to stand for customer relationship management, but company relationship management. So he saw the platform as a way to change and manage the culture of the company around data and collaboration. And so if you go to the next slide, that delivered outstanding results. So if you see around 20 on the left, 2012 was when they implemented Sales Cloud. And so all the activities from 2012 until about 2019 were all being done on the platform. So every touch point of every opportunity, every quote was captured on the platform. And then in 2019 and 2020, they implemented CPQ and Manufacturing Cloud. And the black line is the profit. And the orange line again is the revenue. So they saw 300% revenue growth, 1,400% profit growth, because now they knew, based on 8+ years of history, which opportunities to work on, which deals were going to reveal the most profit and the most returns. And this is not an industry that's growing. So they're just gaining share and profitability because they're only focusing on those deals and customers that are most profitable for them. And on the acquisition side, also equally bold, all acquisitions go over to Salesforce day one. There's no long 6 or 12-month transition period. Everyone has to snap over because they're not in Salesforce, they don't exist in my box. So it's a fairly bold example of going all in on the single platform approach, but I think the numbers speak for themselves in terms of the overall impact. This is also, by the way, available on our Salesforce Plus platform as a recorded from Dreamforce. So you can go view it on the manufacturing section if you're interested in hearing from the CEO himself. And with that, I think we'll hand it back over to Britta for Q&A.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much for those great customer stories and learning more about how that all works. So kind of the first question I want to open with is, Andrew, I know you touched on this briefly about the technology investments, but I'm curious more, like, how does it actually work for sample management? And I don't know, Chris, you could take that one as well. I know we've had some times where we've helped manage that for a customer, but just want to understand, can Salesforce handle sample management and what does that look like?
Well, yeah, sample management's a great example. So traditionally, when before we started creating manufacturing specific functionality, if you wanted to do sample management, you typically would customize the case object and create some workflows around case management. But in some cases, you also may want to use commerce. And so what we've done with Manufacturing Cloud is actually built in a dedicated data model for allowing you to manage the capturing of the sample, aligning resources from your technical service team to support the consumption of that and qualification of that sample, and then the ability to forecast the demand for both those services as well as the sample product. And then you can automate that for lower value customers by doing self-service for sample management using B2B commerce. So quite a bit of capability around sample management. Did you have any examples from your case study, Christopher?
Yeah. And actually, one of our customers also in the custom colors and pigment space, a sample to them is a couple of different things. One, it's there might be something on the shelf that they could send, but in a large part, it's a custom sample, right? That is tied to an estimate profile. So the customer is generally asking for an estimate along with that sample. And as we generate that, everything's tied together in CPQ. So that allows us to basically, once that request comes in, whether it comes in through commerce or it's manually entered from a sales rep, it routes to the estimating team and then also the production team if a sample needs to be generated. And so everything from that point, right from that sample request, we've already got a profitability profile, a customer profile, everything that we need to be able to suggest, okay, at what point do we need to price this product if they were to buy it? And how would we even manufacture it depending on what those requirements are. So a lot of this, and I think Andrew teased, right, we've got a lot of capability on the Salesforce platform, and I know that that's an area where it's even investing further around sample management. But yeah, it's very, very common, and we see it a lot.
Awesome. The next question, kind of leaning into the capabilities of the platform, is more about extensibility. So like managed packages, other things that you do beyond just what is built into Manufacturing Cloud, Service, or Sales Cloud. Is there anything you can speak to from the ecosystem perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I can, I'm sure Andrew probably has some as well, but there are a couple of different managed packages out in the App Exchange with some other partners that, for instance, can connect SAP to Salesforce. There's some other ones too where, Salesforce is a great a great forecasting tool. However, sometimes people just like the look and feel of Excel or more of a tabular spreadsheet type experience to update those forecast projections. So there's another tool out there. I want to say Anosix, but Andrew, you might have to correct me.
That's
There you go. That allows you to sort of connect the Excel, the Excel experience to Salesforce, but having all the data still reside in Salesforce. So you kind of get best of both worlds. And there's a lot of other things out there like that. I know Forefront, we talked about our smart inventory. We've got pre-built packages for manufacturers that we often reuse, which sort of increases the value and time to value. But yeah, it's a whole ecosystem of additions.
Awesome.
Yeah, and a couple others that are, I think, really relevant in this space are, safety and compliance with Compliance Quest, as well as Zilliant for pricing optimization. Those are other two key partners that we see often in this sector.
Great. Kind of similar to the idea of manipulating demand. I mean, do you see that often with customers that are trying to, put in their own demand plans, and like for the end customer, you're looking at a sales agreement, but someone has something they want to tell you about how it might change. What does that look like, and how do you manage that in Salesforce?
One of the things that we've done in the past is we've actually exposed the forecast directly to the customer. And the nice thing about forecasting in Manufacturing Cloud is that it's completely all the history, and there's revision history throughout, and then you can see any adjustments that are made. So what we would do is when the customer was ordering a product, we would ask them, okay, when do you anticipate needing a reorder? What is your volume throughout the year, and is that volume changing? So as they were ordering, we made them answer that question there, and that updated our forecast in real time. So we're kind of going directly to the source for the data that we're looking for demand planning. And all that can be done through the B2B Commerce or Salesforce Experience Cloud platform.
Yeah, and the key to that, Britta, is you're essentially putting the responsibility on the customer and the sales team to be part of that demand planning process. That's in our research where the gap was. In this organization, which I'm very familiar with, previously they sort of incentivized their sales reps to do deals at the end of the month, truckload deals at the end of the month or the end of the quarter, and it would create these very dimensional into the traditional planning software the back office team was using. And so by really taking a look at the full year's worth of business and understanding, okay, this is what you did last year, this is what you think you're going to do this year, here's the seasonality, here are the mix of products, and really making the whole team work together to optimize this. This has, I think, been possible just because of the pandemic and all the issues we've had in the last 12 months, as everyone realizes they have to have more ownership of what, in fact, is going to happen in the upcoming weeks and months in terms of ordering.
Awesome. I think that lends perfectly into the next question we got. So just understanding, is there any way to identify which customers should be prioritized for available inventory? So in those times where all of a sudden the demand exceeds what you have on hand right then, how do you decide which accounts you're going to service first?
Well, I'll touch on it and then hand it over to Christopher. So the key here is really segmentation. So where most organizations have typically invested in, bringing in a McKinsey or someone, and they've created very elaborate segmentation models. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, they don't have a way of treating those segments differently. Maybe, they'll have a few strategic customers who get special treatment because they've got dedicated account teams, but in aggregate, they really have a hard time treating those different segments. So it's the ability to understand, okay, I've only got 100 units of stuff, I've got 150 units of demand. Understanding that with your segmentation and automated workflows, giving the management team a recommendation of who should get what. because some of the customers I talked to at the beginning of the pandemic, they were literally getting 400% more orders than they could fulfill in a given day. They were having to extract that in a spreadsheet, and then the sales leadership would fight over it for an entire day. And then they had to manually go in and edit those orders in SAP before releasing them to the warehouse, which couldn't ship them on time because they were releasing less than full pallets, less than full cases. And so it was just a total chaos. So really connecting that all together, so at least the management team's getting a recommendation of who should get what, not just for that one order, but in the total view of the book of business for that customer. I don't know, Christopher, have you got any other example?
No, that's a great example. I mean, it's all about, like you said, segmenting, but also just having the visibility and some sort of process of approval around it. Because we've often find in this area, it's this, the squeakiest wheel gets the grease, whether it's the sales rep that's representing a customer or it's the customer themselves. And to have sort of a more objective view of the world and how you want to fulfill these things, and starts with getting everything in one place so we can make those decisions. But yeah, sort of agree with everything.
Awesome. Okay, and then kind of speaking of data specifically, I mean, how would you handle forecasting on the end user data as opposed to the distributor data, considering, we're relying on that distributor to get us that end user data?
Yeah, this is a very, very common one in manufacturing where, the OEM is selling through distribution or some sort of channel, and then that channel is then passing, selling on to another end user, B2B or B2C. And oftentimes the channel partner doesn't necessarily want to show their hand and say, all right, this is how much we're selling versus not selling. So first and foremost, we are doing, we can do forecasting at that channel partner level. We want to know what the distributors are doing, what the dealers are doing. To get, even further, and this happens a lot in construction where you've got large projects and more ebbs and flows to the business. It's not as consistent. We really incentivize the sales team to be able to have those discussions at the distribution level and give them the tools to be able to capture that data during those discussions. And then getting the actuals, right? Because that's the other tricky part, is once the order actually gets placed, how do we know where it went? Did it go to customer A or customer B? Because both of those customers are actually sold through a specific distributor. And that's where we can embed a process around ship and debit or sort of a quoted price. So we have a customer that quotes large projects. They're all sold through distribution, but those quotes are what's used to actually link back the orders to the actual end user. So we have a whole process around that in Salesforce and B2B commerce. But there's multiple different methods to attack it. But yeah, sorry, Andrew, you're going to say something?
Yeah, and I'll just chime in on that. Often in the chemical sector, this is referred to as credit upon proof of sale. And so that's one of the reasons we built into the Manufacturing Cloud product suite, rebate and loyalty management. Because you're essentially incentivizing, you can reach all the way through to the indirect customer. You can create incentive programs and rebates at the distributor level. And these are techniques to actually engage the channel partners and indirect customers and get that data directly. This is particularly important with some of the first party data regulations in Europe. But that's the reason we built that in, and it's end to end, because we found a lot of organizations were investing in best of breed rebate solutions, but they were silos. So they would spend millions of dollars on these rebates, but they would have no idea if it was driving a change in the product mix, if it was really delivering the results that we're looking for, sort of a black hole. And so by bringing it into the end-to-end commercial and pricing process, you're able to see what rebates are doing what for which segments of customers or which product lines. And so it's all connected as part of the commercial excellence process.
Awesome. Okay, diving more into forecasting. So, right now we've begun 2023. What can someone do now to impact your 2023 forecasting? Is it too late? And what do we do?
Well, I can tell you that at least in the customer example we talked about, forecasting is happening all the time. It is a dynamically changing as market conditions, macroeconomic, things change. So no, it is not too late. I think the key is setting up the foundation so that you can forecast dynamically and sort of in real time. And once you get there, then you'll have the luxury of being able to sort of click a button, adjust the view and say, okay, based in this geography, based on this territory, based on this sales rep, based on this customer segment, what are we anticipating? It goes back to the MyPOC story. If it's not in Salesforce, it doesn't exist. And if we can build that, then forecasting can be as easy as a click of a button in a lot of cases.
Awesome. And just one last question, just kind of looking at specific tools and clouds. So I know we looked at Commerce Cloud, Manufacturing Cloud. Which licenses would be required to enhance what you already have? Is it Manufacturing Cloud, or do we have to have, where do you begin from a product perspective for licensing?
Well, I'll start. Really, one of the key misconceptions is that Manufacturing Cloud is a different product. Because we call it Manufacturing Cloud. It is, in fact, basically kind of CRM 2.0 designed for manufacturers. And so you all have it already in your org if you're a customer. It's just a perm set license to turn it on, impact any of the customization you've done, but you'll get a lot more out of the box functionality and a dedicated data model to do the use cases we're talking about. And you can do that on sales, on service licenses, or our combo sales and service license. They all can be upgraded. Once you've done that, then typically to get the most value out of it, you really should be adding the revenue intelligence or the analytics components to really take advantage of having all that data in one place. And then the next step is Commerce or Experience Cloud to start collaborating with customers externally. That's typically the flow that we see.
Awesome. Well, that was our last question. So I'll hand it back over to you guys.
All right, so I appreciate everyone's time this morning. I'll wrap it up with just a quick summary. So generally, where we're engaging with customers in terms of helping them plan out a roadmap to execute some of these capabilities we described, it's really around commercial operations. That's kind of the core of Manufacturing Cloud, transforming and elevating that service experience. And if you're going through a channel, that partner experience, enabling the workforce of the future. And then translating data into insights and actions through integration and analytics. Those are kind of the 5 key areas that we're engaging customers in this sector on. And then I'll hand it over to Christopher.
Yeah, and like I said, we're partners with Salesforce. So if in these particular industries and in areas, we're happy to help. Typically how we start to engage is through system process analytics. We'll look at our analysis rather. We'll look at where we're starting from, so we can build a plan together. And ideally, we could blueprint out our path to having sort of this connected value chain and all the different elements that we need along the way to get there. A big portion of that is almost always integration, right? I suggest that ERP integration is generally table stakes for this, and it just allows you to drive so much value from the platform. And then once we have a plan around Salesforce solutions and extensions and so on, it's really about having a plan to actually execute, and Forefront is there as well. So we've got a team of experts, solution architects, integration architects, designers, and business analysts to really help you execute and derive value from the investment. So with that, I want to say thank you to everybody, Andrew, Britta, and everybody that took the time to join today. It was really great to be able to share this story, and hopefully, we'll be able to hear from you soon.
Thank you, everyone.